The camera drifts across Windsor's honeystone geometry, glancing off leaded windows and centuries of ritual, and then lands on a room that remembers everything: the King's drawing room, a vantage point over West London's sprawl and the neat lines of Eton College where a teenage prince once tried to fold himself into ordinary. He does not pretend it's ordinary now. Eugene Levi, the reluctant traveller who has made an art of curious understatement, asks a question that slices through ceremony like glass through silk. Do you miss your grandmother? There is no courtier's delay, no diplomatic detour. I do actually, yeah, William says, voice low and showy. I do miss my grandmother, and my grandfather. It is both a confession and a compass. Because for him, he explains, Windsor is her corridors that carry her footsteps, paddocks that keep the memory of horses warm, rooms that still expect her precise brand of order. She loved it here, she spent most of her time here, he adds, and then the line that tells you exactly what the day is about: showing you around is about showing you what she would want you to see. The scene is domestic theatre with the fourth wall politely dismantled. Levi has been lured to the castle with a hand-delivered note at the Goring, a wink to royal trivia and a breadcrumb for viewers who catalogue these things. Why don't you pop down to the castle, the prince writes, as if the walk to 1,000 years of sovereignty is a casual errand. The producers keep the reveal close to the vest, and the joke continues when William rolls into the quadrangle on a scooter, a prince puncturing pomp with a grin. We provide this service for everyone, we do personalized tours everywhere, he quips, the deadpan landing neatly between Canadian sitcom and British understatement. But the levity sits on something heavier. 3 years is not a long time to remodel a life, and the line that has already detonated on social media, 2024 was the hardest year I've ever had, hangs in the air even when the microphones aren't pointed at it. Cancer turned calendars into puzzles, hospitals into waypoints, and privacy into a daily fight. He doesn't repeat the whole story here, he doesn't have to. The room knows. What he does instead is thread grief into geography. For him, Windsor is Elizabethan, not by era but by ownership. The late Queen's presence is everywhere, on saddle racks and diary pages, in the way the staff move like a choreography she choreographed decades ago. Horses are the shorthand. She had her horses here as well, he says, as though the word can soften the punch of not anymore. In the orchard light you can almost hear the clatter of hooves that won't return, the quiet conversations between a monarch and the only creatures immune to politics. That is what William is really curating for Levi, a tour where sentiment isn't staged but structural, where For Me Windsor is her becomes a map key you can use in every room. Levy's Canadian curiosity carries its own history. He grew up in a Commonwealth realm where the Queen's silhouette lived on coins and in classrooms, where the idea of crown is both local and faraway, intimate and televised. That vantage point makes him the right foil. He asks plainly, listens properly, and lets the silence do work. The series, a bucket list travelogue that normally places him in comic discomfort, tilts here into something rarer. A citizen from one corner of the monarchy asking the air in its engine room what it feels like to inherit not just property and protocol, but absence. And William answers not with slogans but with sentences that feel used, like they've been rehearsed at kitchen tables and whispered on late walks. Change has been constant. The last few years have felt like a storm that won't pick a direction. He misses them. He misses the version of himself who could still reach for advice in a specific voice. The tour is a form of mourning that doubles as induction. That is why Windsor matters, and why the choice of rooms is not accidental. The King's drawing room is not just a pretty backdrop, it is a ledger. It overlooks Eton, a reminder of youth that was public even when it pretended not to be. It holds the skin of a family that has survived by turning private pain into public steadiness. And as the camera follows them down corridors towards smaller spaces, libraries, antechambers, thresholds where briefings happen in whispers, you can see the outline of a training module disguised as hospitality. This is how you tell the story without telling the secrets. This is how you acknowledge sorrow without feeding the soap opera. This is how you fold a grandmother's ghost into a grandson's job description and make both feel useful. If there is a manifesto hiding under the banter, it's about posture, not proclamation. William's Windsor is not built on speeches, it's built on tone. The pint with Levi in a pub nearby, two men knocking the edge off a hard conversation with the simplest of props, functions as a pressure valve and as a signal. He is not here to litigate the internet's favorite arguments or to perform vulnerability on cue. He is here to say aloud what millions understood without permission. Grief is not a press release, and change does not ask for your scheduling preferences. The late Queen taught the nation the power of saying very little for a very long time. Her grandson is experimenting with a slightly different grammar. Say a little more, mean exactly what you say, then get back to work. The window into the prince and his life in Windsor, as a palace source calls it, is not just a ratings line, it is a quiet recalibration of access. The surprise letter, the scooter entrance, the private rooms, the easy jokes, these are sugar on the rim of a bitter drink. Because tucked alongside reminiscence are hints of architecture, fun, family and future, the triad teased by briefers, is not casual alliteration. Fun, the human texture that makes a figure legible beyond uniform and sash. Family, the private engine that must run, even when the world is tapping the fuel gauge. Future, the part of the interview that isn't an interview at all, the unspoken question of what King William V will look like, sound like, prioritize, refuse. Listen carefully, and you catch the outlines. He likes work that is measurable in lives, not headlines, early years as infrastructure, mental health as maintenance, sport as a civic language that reaches people politics can't. He understands that Windsor's magic is not in its turrets, it's in its habit of showing up. He knows the Commonwealth is a web that needs tending, and that a conversation with a Canadian about a British castle is already diplomacy if you get the temperature right. He has learned that the fastest way to feed a bad narrative is to fight it, and the fastest way to starve it is to talk about something real instead. Grief acknowledged, future implied, present executed, that is as close to a royal communications doctrine as anyone will write down. There is a gentler subplot running beneath the marble, grandparenthood as mentorship by haunting. He can still hear the late Queen's editorial voice when he walks through rooms she ruled by routine. Which door first? Which guest last? Where does the eye go in the photograph, and what story will that framing tell in a place you'll never see? He isn't pretending to be her, he is promising to keep the parts of her that worked. That's why the phrase doing it in the way she'd want you to see it matters. It's the difference between nostalgia and stewardship. The former is about recreating an atmosphere, the latter is about preserving a standard. And there is the simple, stubborn ache. Grief is a shapeshifter. In palaces it becomes architecture. It is the way a hallway makes you speed up because it used to hold a particular laugh. It is the way a paddock feels crowded even when it's empty because you can inventory every animal that once made it a kingdom. It is the way a grandson glances left before he answers a difficult question because he used to check that someone was nodding. Levy's question lets that ache be visible without turning it into spectacle. William's answer lets it be ordinary without making it small. Millions of families have lost matriarchs and discovered that the house keeps her outline. Windsor holds one more. The episode's trick, the thing that will make it replayed in living rooms that do not usually rewatch, lies in its refusal to overreach. No claim to perfection, no attempt to solve the monarchy's future in 28 minutes. Just a man who has been famously photographed in uniforms he did not choose and headlines he did not write, making the simplest claim any public servant can. I miss them, I'm still here, I'm going to try to do this the way they would have liked, and when the next hard year arrives, I will say so out loud and then keep going. In a culture allergic to sincerity unless it comes wrapped in irony, that reads like a risk. In a dynasty allergic to overexposure unless it pays, that reads like a plan. So yes, there is symbolism stacked like fine china, the goring letter, the scooter, the pint, the drawing room, the Eton view, the horses that are now stories told in present tense because that is how memory cheats time. And yes, there is strategy, a carefully chosen Canadian, a carefully balanced tone, a carefully protected set of boundaries. But what lingers is the sentence Levi asked for and got. I do miss my grandmother. Windsor heard it. The audience did too. Somewhere in the castle a clock ticked exactly as it did the afternoon she last checked it, and outside the window a school full of loud future walked to dinner. The monarchy survives not because it ignores change, but because it learns how to fold change into ritual without breaking either. On this quiet tour, guided by a grandson who has finally learned how to talk like himself, you can see the folding happen in real time.